Any other members wishing to speak to the amendment? The honourable member for Calgary-Klein.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and it's an honour to speak to the amendment on Government Motion 2. And I think yesterday the House Leader spoke for all members on this side of the House about the significant concerns that we have about parts of the Opposition's amendment, and particularly with the first part A, in which it wants to change the wording to essentially say that this government has not been fighting for pipelines, and nothing could be further from the truth. However, I will indicate that we are prepared to support one part of their amendment, that being the request that the phrase continue to be struck out as it relates to the federal government's use of all necessary legal steps to see the pipeline built. And you know, what's needed is for the federal government to use those tools. And I think this, and as outlined by the Premier, you know, in sponsoring this motion, we want to send a clear and unified message to the country that Albertans are united in our resolve to get this pipeline built. And to that end, we can support the second part of the amendment, specifically being their Part B, Sub 1. So I'll speak a bit about, mostly about right now, why we're not going to support the rest of the amendment. Quickly on Part B, number 2, the House Leader spoke to that just shortly ago, and it's really not necessary to put that in there is the gist of that. But, you know, it has become clear over the last day and a half that there is unanimous, we are unanimous in this Assembly that getting the Trans Mountain Pipeline built is a critical project for Alberta's energy sector. All Albertans and in turn all Canadians will benefit from a new pipeline to the West Coast. And of course, this debate, it's good to have. It allows us to come together, share our ideas, make amendments, and to ensure that we can get on the same page and ultimately get this pipeline built. And at this stage of the process, Madam Speaker, what's required is to have the BC government recognize the importance of this pipeline to the economies of both provinces and all of Canada. We need the BC government to honour the fact that this pipeline was approved, and for its Premier to recognize that pipeline approval is federal jurisdiction. And we also need the federal government to send a strong message to them as well. In November 2016, Ottawa approved the Trans Mountain Pipeline, and this was a major step forward. But more work needs to be done to get the pipeline built. As outlined by the Premier, the federal government already has the legal power to assert that this project gets done, which was approved in the national interest and should be carried out in the national interest. Now, ultimately, Madam Speaker, we need the BC government to stop delaying construction. And Madam Speaker, I just want to go back to what I said earlier about the fact that getting a pipeline built is a process. And as much as I said we're all in agreement in this Assembly on the criticality of the Trans Mountain Pipeline, what I think the opposition is forgetting, Madam Speaker, is the fact that the only reason we're here debating next steps as to when to get shovels in the ground is that we passed the first hurdle, which was getting federal approval. And Madam Speaker, we would not have got that approval without having the best climate leadership plan in the country. We would not be at this stage in the process if the opposition had its way. It's that simple. In the opposition's worldview, which is void of a climate leadership plan, which drives innovation and efficiency in both traditional oil and gas and in the renewable sector, in the opposition's worldview, we're not standing here talking about shovels in the ground. No, Madam Speaker, we would still be trying to convince the federal government of the need for a pipeline. And we'd have no answers to questions like, what are you doing to reduce emissions? Or what are your targets for renewables on the grid? And Madam Speaker, it really is because of this government's foresight, because of this government working with the energy sector on policy, climate leadership, royalties, renewables, that we have approval for the pipeline that we are debating here today. And what's more, Madam Speaker, British Columbia should take notice of the fact that we do have a robust climate leadership plan. and that it should be a factor in their decision to stop delaying construction. Now, the opposition can jeer at the idea of social license, Madam Speaker, but make no mistake, the Climate Leadership Plan is a necessary component of getting this pipeline built, and this government knew this from the start. And you know what else this government understood, Madam Speaker? This government knew that action against man-made climate change is simply the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do for our children and our grandchildren's future, and it's the right thing for the longevity of the energy sector, driving efficiencies and research and development into other areas like renewables. And with that said, Madam Speaker, with this government setting the stage with strong economic and environmental arguments, with this government's use of diplomacy with both the federal and provincial governments, with Premier Notley using the BC wine ban to demonstrate with the Premier using the BC wine ban to demonstrate to the BC government that she is focused and determined to get this pipeline built, and with the Premier's continued focus on this file, Madam Speaker, I am optimistic. I am optimistic that the Trans Mountain Pipeline will be built. And when it is, the opposition must understand that it never stood a chance under its watch. Modern pipeline construction is complicated. People are demanding responsible energy development and responsible pipeline construction. Purchasers of energy are demanding the same. And this is what this government and my colleagues on this side of the Assembly understand, and this is something that the opposition is missing. It comes down to the fact that we believe that we can have a thriving energy sector and a robust climate leadership plan. In fact, we believe it is necessary. Now, Madam Speaker, I don't believe that getting the Trans Mountain Pipeline should be a partisan issue, but because it benefits the entire country, and we all benefit from this pipeline. But with that said, Madam Speaker, you know, the opposition continually bets against Alberta in getting the Trans Mountain Pipeline built. They see victory in pipeline construction being delayed. They put ideology and misinformation ahead of success for the province. And nowhere is this more evident than the fact that the opposition continually suggests that members of the government caucus are anti-energy. Nothing is further from the truth, Madam Speaker. The opposition mistakes a call for sustainable, responsible energy development as anti-energy. But this is what the world wants, Madam Speaker, and the world has taken notice. In fact, with that being said, it's the opposition that is anti-energy. It's the opposition that doesn't understand the modern energy industry. As such, Madam Speaker, it does nothing for the success in getting this pipeline built when the opposition falsely accuses this caucus of being anti-energy. It does nothing for the success of getting the pipeline built. Madam Speaker, knowing what's available at this stage of the process to get shovels in the ground is extremely important. And I'm grateful, Madam Speaker, that we have a Premier that people view as tough. Tough but not scary. At least not scary in the sense that she's not trying to drag the energy industry back 30 years. Not scary in the sense that people fear that economic and social progress will cease to continue to move forward under her watch. Madam Speaker, we've seen the Premier's resolve on the pipeline file. We've seen the caucus's resolve on the pipeline file. And Madam Speaker, getting the Trans Mountain Pipeline built is necessary, and it requires a delicate balance of environmental action and progress, and a steely resolve. And Madam Speaker, Alberta has the right Premier to get the job done. You know, when the city of Burnaby tried to block Kinder Morgan pipeline in court, we intervened. When the BC government tried to overstep its authority and regulate something it had no right to regulate, we stood up. We shut down talks about electricity sales to BC that could have meant up to $500 million per year for them, and we banned BC wine from Alberta shelves and brought together a task force to provide us with the best advice. Now, I've had many conversations with my constituents in calgary-klein over the past few months, Madam Speaker, and they know that we're focused on their priorities, like fighting to get this long overdue pipeline to the coast built. And we refuse to let anyone turn their backs on hardworking people in our energy sector. On this side of the House, we're fighting for pipelines and hardworking Albertans, and we're not going to cheer for Alberta to fail because of narrow political interests. We're focused on creating good jobs in a diversified energy economy. Unlike members of the opposite, we are not going to settle for the same old boom and bust policies that hurt working families. So in closing, Madam Speaker, I would just like to say that I am full support of this pipeline and in full support of the Premier's approach to getting this pipeline built. And I have the utmost confidence that every decision the Premier has made to date and every decision she makes going forward is in the best interest of Alberta's energy industry and will lead to getting this pipeline built. So, Madam Speaker, the Premier and Alberta's energy industry have my full support, as does Section B, subset 1 of this amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.